At my ex-husband's funeral, my daughter said, "You shouldn't even be here." When the lawyer read his final letter, mentioning only me with love, she walked out of the room. "Your presence here means so much to me. Watch until the end and leave a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I want to see how far my story has reached." At my ex-husband's funeral, my daughter said, "You shouldn't even be here." When the lawyer read his final letter, mentioning only me with love, she stormed out of the room. The funeral home smelled of lilies and regret. I sat in the back row, dressed in a simple black dress that I'd worn to too many funerals lately at my age. People whispered when I walked in. I could feel their eyes on me, questioning why Robert's ex-wife of 30 years would show up to pay her respects. "Mom." Caroline's voice was cold as she approached. At 48, she looked so much like her father, the same sharp jawline, the same way of looking down slightly when confronting someone. "You shouldn't even be here." I clutched my purse tighter. "He was your father, Caroline. We were married for 18 years. And divorced for 30. This is hard enough without you making it about yourself." Her voice cracked slightly, betraying the grief she was trying to mask with anger. I wanted to reach out, to touch her arm, to tell her I was there for her too. But the wall between us had been built brick by brick over decades, and I couldn't find a way through. "I'm just here to pay my respects," I said softly. Caroline shook her head and walked away, rejoining her husband and children in the front row. My grandchildren, 2 teenagers I barely knew because their mother had made sure of it. The service was tasteful, just like everything in Robert's life had been. His business partners spoke of his integrity. His golf buddies remembered his sense of humor. His second wife, Sandra, dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief as she talked about their 28 years together. I sat silent, remembering a different Robert. The young man with dreams too big for our small apartment. The father who sang off-key lullabies to baby Caroline. The husband who gradually grew distant as his family's business demands increased. After the eulogies, Robert's lawyer, Michael Thornton, stepped up to the podium. I hadn't expected this part. "Robert asked that I read this letter upon his passing," Michael said, adjusting his glasses. "These are his final words to those he loved." I prepared myself to hear Robert's declarations of love for Sandra, his pride in Caroline, his hopes for his grandchildren. I was only here as a footnote in his life, after all. "My dearest Elaine," Michael began. My head snapped up. The room went silent. "If you're hearing this, I've finally run out of time to make things right. There was never a day in 30 years that I didn't think of you. The decision I made was the biggest mistake of my life." I couldn't breathe. From the corner of my eye, I saw Caroline stiffen. I told myself I was choosing what was best for Caroline, for the business, for everyone. But the truth is, I was a coward. I let my parents dictate my life, just as they always had. And I lost the only woman I ever truly loved. Sandra's face had turned to stone. Caroline stood up abruptly. "I hope you've had a beautiful life, Lainey. I hope you found the happiness I was too weak to fight for. And I hope someday Caroline will know the truth about why we really ended. I've loved you always. Robert." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Caroline's voice cut through it. "How dare you," she hissed, though I wasn't sure if she was addressing me, her dead father, or both of us. She grabbed her purse and stormed out, her husband and children following in confused silence. Sandra stared straight ahead, her humiliation on public display. The other mourners looked anywhere but at each other. And I sat frozen, the nickname no one had called me in 30 years echoing in my ears. Lainey. He'd called me Lainey when we were young and in love, before his family's expectations crushed us both. After the service, I slipped away before anyone could confront me. In my car, I finally let the tears come. Not for the man who had just been buried, but for the young woman I had been. The one who believed that love was enough. The one who didn't understand that in families like Robert's, love was always secondary to legacy. My phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Matthews?" This is Michael Thornton, Robert's lawyer. We need to talk. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the screen. It's about the letters, he added. All of them. What letters? My voice sounded strange even to my own ears as I sat in my parked car outside the funeral home. Robert left a key with specific instructions. There are things he wanted you to have. Michael's tone was professional, but I detected a note of curiosity. Could you meet me at his office tomorrow morning? 9 o'clock? I agreed, my mind spinning. After hanging up, I sat in silence, watching mourners trickle out of the funeral home. Caroline emerged, her arm linked with Sandra's. The sight struck me as odd, they had never been close during the marriage. Now they were united in grief, and perhaps in anger toward me. My small apartment felt emptier than usual that evening. I poured a glass of wine and sat by the window, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. Robert had always loved sunsets. Once, during our early years together, we'd driven all the way to the coast just to watch the sun sink into the ocean. Some things are worth dropping everything for, Lainey, he'd said. But in the end, I hadn't been one of those things. The next morning, I dressed carefully, a navy pantsuit that made me feel armored. I arrived at the downtown building that housed the headquarters of Westfield Industries 10 minutes early. The receptionist eyed me curiously but directed me to the elevator. Mr. Thornton is waiting for you in Mr. Westfield's office. 18th floor. The office was exactly as I remembered it from the one time I'd visited, nearly 35 years ago. The same imposing mahogany desk. The same view of the city. But the young, ambitious man who had sat behind that desk was gone. Michael rose when I entered. Mrs. Matthews. Thank you for coming. He gestured to a leather chair. Please. What's this about, Michael? I didn't sit. What letters? He walked to a painting on the wall, an abstract piece in blues and grays that I recognized with a shock. I had painted it. It had hung in our first apartment. Michael swung the painting forward, revealing a small wall safe. Robert kept his most personal items here. Only he had the combination. He pulled an envelope from his pocket. Until he gave it to me last month. I watched as he entered the combination. The safe door swung open. Inside was a single wooden box, about the size of a shoe box. He was specific about this. The contents are for you alone. Michael lifted out the box and placed it on the desk. I'll give you privacy. After he left, I approached the box cautiously, as if it might contain something dangerous. In a way, it did. The box was made of cherry wood, polished to a warm glow. A small brass key was taped to the top. My hands trembled as I removed the key and slid it into the lock. Inside, I found dozens of envelopes, all addressed to me, all in Robert's distinctive handwriting. They were arranged chronologically, dates marked in the corner of each envelope. The first was dated just 1 month after our divorce was finalized. I sank into the chair, picking up the first letter with unsteady fingers. The paper had yellowed slightly with age. Dear Lainey. I've written this letter 100 times in my head. I don't know if I'll ever send it. I don't know if I have the right to contact you at all after what I've done. Caroline asked about you today. I told her you were busy with your new life. Another lie to add to the pile. I wonder if there will come a point when the weight of these lies will crush me. My father congratulated me yesterday on making the right decision for the family. As if destroying our family was something to celebrate. Mother has already introduced me to the daughter of one of their friends. You'd hate her. She's everything you're not, polished, proper, boring. I miss your laugh. I miss how you used to sing in the shower, thinking I couldn't hear you. I miss the way you always knew what I was thinking. I'm sorry. For everything. Not that it matters now. Always yours, Robert. Tears blurred my vision. I set the letter down and picked up another, dated 6 months later. Dear Lainey. I saw you today. You were coming out of that little bookstore you always loved. Your hair is shorter now. You looked good. Happy, maybe. I almost called out to you, but what right do I have to disrupt your life again? Caroline misses you, though she won't admit it. She started acting out at school. The counselor says it's a response to the divorce. My parents think I should send her to boarding school. Structure, they say. As if what she really needs isn't obvious to anyone with eyes. I hate what I've become. A puppet dancing on my family strings. Always yours, Robert. Letter after letter, year after year. Robert's handwriting changed subtly over time, becoming more refined, more controlled, but the sentiment remained the same. Regret. Longing. Love. In one letter, he wrote about his marriage to Sandra, an arranged union designed to merge two business empires. In another, he described watching from a distance as I received an award for my work as an art teacher. You always said you'd open your own studio someday. I saw in the paper that you finally did it. I drove by last week but didn't have the courage to go in. I was so proud of you, Lainey. You're building the life you always wanted. The life I was too weak to build with you. My phone buzzed, startling me. A text message from an unknown number. Where do you get off showing your face at Dad's funeral? And now you're at his office? Stay away from my family. Caroline. I stared at the screen, my heart breaking anew. She was so convinced that I was the villain in this story. And how could I blame her? It was the narrative she'd been fed her entire adult life. I glanced at the pile of unread letters. There had to be at least 30 more. Did you ever intend to send these, Robert? I whispered to the empty room. Or were they just a way to ease your conscience? I needed air. I needed time to process what I'd discovered. Carefully, I replaced the letters in the box, locked it, and took it with me. Michael was waiting in the reception area. Did you find what you needed, Mrs. Matthews? I clutched the box to my chest. No, Mr. Thornton. But I found what Robert needed me to know. The box of letters sat on my kitchen table for 3 days. Each night, I'd read a few more, then have to stop as the emotions became too overwhelming. 30 years of Robert's life, documented in words never meant to be sent. 30 years of regret. I learned things I never knew. How his father had threatened to disinherit him if he stayed with me. How he'd driven by our old house on my birthday every year. How he'd secretly attended Caroline's college graduation, standing at the back to avoid confronting me. But the most painful revelations were about Caroline. In a letter dated when she was 16, Robert wrote, Caroline asked about the divorce again today. I took the coward's way out, as usual. I implied that you'd left us for someone else. The look in her eyes, Lainey, the hurt and betrayal. I hate myself for putting it there, but once the lie was spoken, I couldn't take it back. I read that paragraph over and over until the words blurred. All these years, my daughter had believed I'd abandoned her for another man. The pieces clicked into place, her coldness, her refusal to let me explain, the way she'd cut me from her life so completely. Another letter, written when Caroline was in college. She came home for Thanksgiving with a new boyfriend. When I asked about him, she said, he's nothing like Mom. He'd never cheat. I should have told her the truth then. I saw myself in her eyes, the innocent party, the abandoned father who'd raised her alone. But we both know that's not what happened. My heart felt like it was being torn apart. Robert had constructed an elaborate fiction and trapped our daughter inside it. Now he was gone, and I was left with the impossible task of unraveling 30 years of lies. I picked up my phone and dialed Caroline's number, not expecting her to answer. To my surprise, she did. What do you want? Her voice was cold. We need to talk, Caroline. I fought to keep my voice steady. About your father. About what really happened between us. I know what happened. Dad told me everything. No, I said quietly. He didn't. Silence stretched between us. I found some letters, I continued. Things your father wrote but never sent. They explain a lot. More convenient timing, she said bitterly. Dad dies and suddenly you have proof you weren't the bad guy? Save it. Caroline, please. Just meet me. 1 hour of your time. If you still hate me after that, I'll respect your wishes. I'll stay away. Another long silence. I could almost hear her internal debate. Fine. Tomorrow. The cafe on Oakwood. Noon. She hung up before I could respond. I hardly slept that night. What would I say? How could I explain that her father had lied to her for decades without destroying her memory of him? The man she'd adored had constructed a false reality and raised her inside it. Learning that truth would shatter her world. I arrived early, selecting a quiet table in the back. The cafe was nearly empty, just a couple of students with laptops and an elderly man reading a newspaper. I'd brought a few of the most revelatory letters, though part of me wondered if showing them to Caroline would be cruel. She arrived precisely at noon, dressed in a crisp business suit that reminded me of Robert. Her expression was guarded as she sat across from me. I can only stay 45 minutes, she said without preamble. I have a meeting. I nodded, suddenly unsure where to begin. Thank you for coming. Just say whatever it is you need to say. I took a deep breath. Your father's lawyer gave me a box after the funeral. It contained letters Robert had written to me over the past 30 years. Letters he never sent. Her expression didn't change. And I'm supposed to believe these convenient letters that no one else has seen? I brought some of them, I said, reaching for my bag. But before I show you. Caroline, I need you to understand something. Your father loved you more than anything in this world. I know that. Her voice had a defensive edge. The things he wrote, they might change how you see him. That's not why I'm showing you. I just need you to know that I never abandoned you. I never stopped trying to be part of your life until you made it clear you didn't want me there. She scoffed. You left us. You walked out. No, Caroline. That's what he told you, but it's not what happened. My voice caught. Your grandparents gave him an ultimatum. The family business or me. They never thought I was good enough. I didn't have the right background, the right education. That's ridiculous. Grandpa and Grandma would never. They did. And Robert chose the business. He chose the life that was planned for him. I slid an envelope across the table. This is from the first year after our divorce. She stared at the envelope without touching it. I don't need to read your proof. I lived it, Mother. I was 13 when you walked out. I remember. What exactly do you remember? Her eyes flashed. I remember Dad telling me you weren't coming home. I remember crying myself to sleep. I remember waiting for you to call, to visit, and you never did. My heart broke. I called every day for months. Your father's parents controlled everything. They blocked my calls, returned my letters. I felt tears threatening. I tried to see you at school once. Your grandmother had already told them I wasn't allowed contact. That's not. Her voice faltered. That's not how Dad told it. I slid another letter toward her. Please, just read this one. Then decide if you want to hear more or if you want me to leave you alone forever. She hesitated, then slowly reached for the letter. As she unfolded the paper, I saw her hands trembling slightly. I watched as my daughter read the words her father had written 25 years ago. Watched as the color drained from her face. Watched as everything she thought she knew began to crumble. Caroline read the letter twice, her hands shaking. I watched as disbelief, confusion, and then pain flashed across her face. This could be fake, she said finally, but there was no conviction in her voice. She recognized her father's handwriting as well as I did. I have dozens more, I said quietly. spanning 30 years. She set the letter down carefully, as if it might burn her. Why would he lie to me? To protect himself, I said. To justify his choice. And you never tried to tell me the truth? In 30 years? I tried, Caroline. In the beginning, I tried so hard it nearly broke me. Your grandparents had so much power in this town. They made sure I couldn't see you, couldn't talk to you. I took a deep breath. Then, when you were older and could have made your own decisions, you were already convinced I was the villain. You didn't want to hear anything I had to say. She stared out the window, her profile so like her father's it made my heart ache. When I was 17, I found your number. I called you. I leaned forward, surprised. I never got that call. I hung up when a man answered. She turned back to me, her eyes accusing. You were with someone else. The memory clicked into place. My brother. Tom was staying with me after his divorce. Another piece of the misunderstanding that had shaped our relationship. Caroline, there was never anyone else. Not during my marriage, not after. She shook her head, struggling to reconcile this new information with the story she'd believed for decades. Dad said you left because you wanted a different life. Because our family was holding you back from your art. My art? I couldn't help the bitter laugh that escaped. I didn't pick up a paintbrush for 5 years after the divorce. I was working 3 jobs just to keep a roof over my head. Caroline's expression hardened. So Dad was just a liar? Is that what you want me to believe? No. Your father was a man who made a terrible choice when he was young, then spent the rest of his life unable to admit it was a mistake. I sighed. It was easier to make me the villain than to admit he chose his family's money and approval over love. And his deathbed confession? That convenient letter declaring his love for you after 30 years? Was that just his final manipulation? I don't know, I answered honestly. Maybe he finally wanted the truth to come out. Maybe he wanted forgiveness. Caroline stood abruptly. I need to go. Wait, I said, reaching for her hand. She pulled away. There's more you should know. I've heard enough for one day. Her voice was tight with emotion. I need time to process this. I nodded, understanding. When you're ready, I'm here. I've always been here, Caroline. She gathered her purse, then paused. That letter. He wrote that when I was in college? Yes. After you brought home your first serious boyfriend. A shadow crossed her face. Jake. I married him because Dad liked him so much. She gave a hollow laugh. I divorced him 2 years later when I caught him cheating. History repeating itself, or so I thought. With that, she walked out, leaving me alone with the ghost of Robert and the wreckage of his lies. That evening, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, I found Sandra standing there, immaculate in designer black, her face carefully composed. May I come in? She asked. Surprised, I stepped aside. Sandra had never been to my home before. We'd crossed paths only a handful of times over the years, always maintaining a careful distance. She glanced around my living room, taking in the modest furniture, the walls covered with artwork, some my own, some from my students. Caroline called me, she said, perching on the edge of my sofa. She was very upset. I'm sorry for that, I said cautiously. It wasn't my intention. Sandra smoothed her skirt, a nervous gesture at odds with her collected appearance. You showed her the letters. I stiffened. You knew about them? Not until the end. She met my eyes directly. Robert told me about them a month before he died. He showed me where they were kept. He wanted me to know everything. I sat down slowly, trying to process this. Why are you here, Sandra? Because despite what you might think, I'm not your enemy. She sighed. I never was. I was just a woman who accepted the marriage her parents arranged, just like Robert did. You were married for 28 years. Yes. A perfectly pleasant business partnership with occasional moments of genuine affection. Her smile was sad. But Robert never loved me. Not the way he loved you. I didn't know what to say to that. Did you read all the letters? She asked. I shook my head. There are so many. I've only made it through about half. Sandra reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. Unlike the others, this one was crisp and new. He wrote this one 2 weeks before he died. He asked me to give it to you if you ever found the others. My hands trembled as I took it. You could have thrown it away. Why didn't you? Because despite everything, I respected him. And because I've lived too long with secrets. She stood up. I'll leave you to read it. But Elaine? There's something you should know about Caroline. I looked up. What? She's getting divorced. Her second husband. She hasn't told anyone yet, but... Sandra hesitated. She's more vulnerable than she seems. Whatever you do with those letters, please be gentle with her. She idolized Robert. After Sandra left, I sat with the unopened letter for a long time. Outside, rain began to fall, tapping against the windows in a soothing rhythm. Finally, I opened it. My dearest Lainey. If you're reading this, then you've found my letters, and I am gone. There's a certain freedom in knowing I won't be here to see the consequences of my confessions. Cowardly to the end, I suppose. I've spent 30 years writing to you, trying to explain, trying to apologize. But words on paper, especially unsent words, are worthless. Actions are what matter. And my actions destroyed 3 lives, yours, mine, and most unforgivably, Caroline's. I told our daughter you abandoned us. I let her believe you chose a different life, a different love, over her. It was easier than admitting I'd surrendered to my parents' demands. Easier than telling her I wasn't strong enough to choose love over money and position. The irony is that I never found happiness in the path they chose for me. The business thrived, yes. Our family name remained respected. But at what cost? I watch Caroline now, trapped in a marriage as empty as mine was, playing the role expected of her just as I did. The cycle continues, and it's my fault. In my final days, I've told Sandra everything. She deserves truth after all these years of living with my ghost. She's agreed to give you this letter if you ever discover the others. I don't ask for forgiveness, Lainey. Some betrayals are too profound for that. But if you can find it in your heart to tell Caroline the truth, not to absolve me, but to free her, I would be grateful. I have loved you every day since we met. That, at least, was never a lie. Always, Robert. I folded the letter carefully, tears streaming down my face. Not for Robert, but for the decades lost. For the relationship with my daughter that had been stolen from me. My phone rang, startling me. Caroline's name flashed on the screen. Mom, she said when I answered, her voice breaking on that single word. I need to see the rest of the letters. I'll bring them, I said, my voice catching. Where should we meet? No, Caroline replied, her voice steadier than I expected. I want to come to you. To see where you live. Where you've been all these years. An hour later, my doorbell rang. When I opened it, Caroline stood there looking smaller somehow, her professional armor replaced by jeans and a simple sweater. Her eyes were red-rimmed. Come in, I said softly, stepping aside. She entered hesitantly, looking around with undisguised curiosity. Her gaze lingered on the paintings that covered my walls, the shelves filled with books, the collection of photographs. She stopped at a framed picture on my bookshelf. Is this? She picked it up. Your 5th birthday, I confirmed. The last one before the divorce. She studied the photo, Robert and I flanking a beaming Caroline with chocolate cake smeared on her face. We looked happy. We were happy. I don't remember this, she murmured. You were so young, I said. And they worked very hard to erase me from your memories. She set down the photo and turned to face me. Sandra came to see me after I left you at the cafe. That surprised me. What did she want? To tell me that Dad confessed everything to her before he died. Caroline's voice was flat. That their marriage was arranged. That he never stopped loving you. That he lied to me my entire life. I didn't know what to say. Caroline moved to the window, looking out at the darkening evening. I always thought she hated you, she continued. But it turns out she pitied you. And me. She turned back to me. Did you know I'm getting divorced again? I nodded. Sandra mentioned it. 2 failed marriages by 48. Following in no one's footsteps, I guess. Her attempt at humor fell flat. Where are the letters? I gestured to the wooden box on my coffee table. Caroline sat on the sofa and opened it, running her fingers over the neatly arranged envelopes. There are so many, she whispered. 30 years worth. She selected one at random, dated about 15 years after the divorce. As she read, her face crumpled. He came to my law school graduation. I never saw him. He was afraid I might be there, I said gently. He wrote about it. She looked up, her eyes filled with confusion. But you weren't there. No. I wasn't invited. The pain of that exclusion had dulled over time, but never completely faded. Caroline flinched. I sent the invitation to Dad and Sandra. I assumed he'd tell you. He didn't. She reached for another letter, then another. With each one, I watched her face change as the father she thought she knew transformed into someone more complicated, more flawed. After the 5th letter, she closed her eyes. What was he like? She asked. Before everything fell apart? I sat beside her, careful to leave space between us. He was kind. Funny. Ambitious, but not in the cutthroat way he became later. He used to say he wanted to build something that would last, but it was about creating, not just accumulating wealth. That's not the father I knew, she said quietly. The man you knew was shaped by the choices he made. By the life he accepted. I hesitated, then added, but he loved you, Caroline. That was never a lie. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. I built my whole life on his version of the truth. My relationship with you, my marriages, even my career. She laughed bitterly. I became a corporate lawyer because I thought it would make him proud. I married men he approved of. You don't have to keep living the script he wrote for you, I said gently. I don't know who I am without it. Her voice was so small, so wounded. I've been so angry for so long. At you. At my husbands. At everyone who didn't meet my expectations. Caroline. I've been awful to you. She looked at me directly for the first time. Every time you reached out, I shut you down. I believed the worst about you without ever giving you a chance to explain. You were a child, I said. A child who was lied to by the adults she trusted most. I wasn't a child forever. She wiped her tears. I could have sought the truth years ago. I chose not to because the lie was more comfortable. We sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of decades of misunderstanding hanging between us. I don't know if we can fix this, she finally said. Neither do I admitted. But I'd like to try. Caroline picked up another letter, then set it down without opening it. There's something else I need to ask you. Something I've always wondered. Anything. Why didn't you fight harder? Her voice broke. For me, I mean. If you knew you were being lied about, why didn't you take Dad to court? Force visitation. The question I'd asked myself 1,000 times. I did, at first. But your grandparents had powerful connections. The judge was a golf buddy of your grandfather's. The court-appointed guardian concluded that seeing me would be disruptive to your stability. Her eyes widened. I didn't know. After the third appeal failed, my lawyer advised me to wait until you were older. I sent birthday cards, Christmas presents. They were all returned. I swallowed hard. When you turned 18, I tried again. I came to your college dorm. Recognition dawned on her face. The day the flowers arrived. With no card. I nodded. You saw me in the hallway. You looked right through me. I didn't recognize you, she whispered. It had been so long. After that, I decided to respect what seemed to be your choice. I kept track of you from a distance. I knew when you got married, when you made partner at your firm. I smiled sadly. I've never been more than a phone call away. Caroline stood suddenly, walking to my bookshelf again. She examined the photos, the trinkets, the small artifacts of my life without her. I have children, she said abruptly. 2. A boy and a girl. 14 and 16. I know, I said softly. Robert mentioned them in his letters. She turned to me, her expression unreadable. They don't know you exist. Or rather, they think you're dead. That's what I told them. The pain was sharp, but not surprising. I understand. No, you don't, she said, her voice stronger now. I've lied to them, just like Dad lied to me. I've perpetuated the cycle. She took a deep breath. I need to break it. 3 weeks passed. Caroline and I spoke on the phone twice, brief, careful conversations that skirted around the edges of our shared pain. She was reading through all of Robert's letters, she told me. Processing. Thinking. I gave her the space she needed, though every day without her felt like another opportunity slipping away. At 68, I was acutely aware of how precious time had become. Then, on a crisp Saturday morning, my doorbell rang. When I opened it, I found Caroline standing there with 2 teenagers, a tall boy with his grandfather's jawline and a girl whose serious eyes reminded me so much of Caroline at that age that it took my breath away. Mom, Caroline said, a hint of nervousness in her voice. This is Jason and Emma. My children. She turned to them. This is your grandmother Elaine. Emma studied me with open curiosity, while Jason hung back, uncertain. I struggled to find words, overwhelmed by the moment I'd given up hoping for. Would you like to come in? I finally managed. I made cinnamon rolls this morning. Real ones? Not from a tube? Emma asked, breaking the tension. I laughed. Real ones. From scratch. Cool, she said, stepping inside. Jason followed, glancing around my apartment with the same curiosity his mother had shown weeks earlier. Over cinnamon rolls and hot chocolate, the initial awkwardness began to fade. Emma was full of questions. Where did I grow up? How did I meet their grandfather? Did I really teach art for 30 years? Jason was quieter, but I caught him studying my paintings with genuine interest. Grandma used to paint, he said, surprising me with the use of that word, grandma. I mean, Grandpa's wife. Sandra. She did, I confirmed. She was quite talented. Not like you, Caroline interjected. Sandra dabbled. You create. I glanced at her, touched by the unexpected compliment. After breakfast, while the kids explored my small balcony garden, Caroline helped me with the dishes. They're wonderful, I said softly. She nodded, a small smile playing at her lips. They've been so confused. First losing their grandfather, then finding out I'm divorcing Richard, and now discovering they have a grandmother they never knew existed. She sighed. But they're resilient. More than I was. You were resilient too, I told her. You survived a terrible betrayal. We both did. She rinsed a plate, her movements careful and precise. I've been thinking a lot about patterns. About how we repeat them without realizing. I waited, sensing she needed to say more. I married John because Dad liked him. I married Richard because he reminded me of Dad in all the superficial ways, successful, ambitious, well-connected. She set the plate down. Both marriages failed for the same reason yours did. They were based on pleasing others, not on what I truly wanted. From the balcony, we heard Emma laugh at something her brother said. Caroline smiled at the sound. I'm selling the house, she continued. It's too big, too full of memories that aren't entirely mine. The kids and I found a smaller place closer to their school. That sounds like a good change. It's a start. She turned to face me. I can't undo the past 30 years, Mom. I can't give you back the time with me that Dad stole, or the years with your grandchildren. I know that, I said gently. But I can stop the pattern. I can make sure Emma and Jason grow up knowing the whole truth, messy as it is. She took a deep breath. And I can try to build something new with you, if you're willing. Tears filled my eyes. I've been willing for 30 years. Caroline hesitated, then reached for my hand. Sunday dinners? Maybe once a month to start? I'd like that very much. A comfortable silence fell between us as we finished the dishes. It wasn't forgiveness yet, that would take time. It wasn't the closeness we might have had without Robert's lies. But it was a beginning. Later, as they were preparing to leave, Jason lingered by one of my landscapes, a painting of the coast, with the sun setting over the water. Did you paint this? He asked. Yes. Many years ago. It's really good. He studied it more closely. I like to draw sometimes. Nothing this good, though. I'd love to see your work sometime, I told him. His shy smile reminded me so much of Robert when we first met, before ambition and family expectations hardened him. Maybe next time, he said. Next time. Two simple words that held so much promise. After they left, I sat in my quiet apartment, feeling the echoes of their presence. I picked up the last of Robert's letters, the one Sandra had delivered. Reading it again, I was struck by his final request, not for forgiveness, but for me to tell Caroline the truth so she could be free. Perhaps, in his own way, Robert had finally found the courage to do the right thing, even if he couldn't face the consequences himself. 6 months later, my small dining table was crowded with plates and glasses, the air filled with conversation and laughter. Sunday dinners had become a twice-monthly tradition. Caroline sat at one end of the table, more relaxed than I could ever remember seeing her. The divorce was finalized, and she had taken a new position at a nonprofit legal aid center, work she found challenging and rewarding in ways her corporate career never had. Emma was enthusiastically describing her school art project, inspired, she claimed, by one of my early watercolors that now hung in their new home. Jason was quieter, but occasionally interjected with surprisingly insightful comments. He had started taking weekend art classes with me, revealing a natural talent that we both enjoyed exploring. As I looked around at this family that had been lost to me for so long, I felt a profound sense of peace. The past couldn't be undone. The years of separation had left marks on all of us. But here, sharing a meal in the soft evening light, we were creating something new from the broken pieces. After dinner, while the kids helped with cleanup, Caroline joined me on the balcony. She held a small gift-wrapped package. I found this when I was cleaning out Dad's study, she said, handing it to me. It was hidden in a locked drawer with your name on it. Inside was a silver locket. I recognized it immediately. I had worn it every day during my marriage to Robert. Inside was a tiny photo of the three of us, taken when Caroline was a baby. I thought he must have thrown it away, I whispered. Caroline shook her head. He kept it all these years. Just like he kept writing those letters. I closed my hand around the locket, feeling its familiar weight. Not a symbol of what was lost, but of what had endured despite everything, love, complicated and imperfect as it was. Mom? Emma called from inside. Jason's showing us his new sketches. Come see. Caroline took my arm as we walked back inside. I've been thinking, she said quietly. This apartment is getting a little small for our Sunday gatherings. It is, I agreed, watching as Jason proudly displayed his sketchbook. My new place has a guest house. It's small, but it has good light for painting. She glanced at me. Would you consider? I squeezed her arm gently. Yes, I said simply. We joined the children at the table, drawn back into their world of possibilities and plans. The past would always be there, with its lies and painful truths. But it no longer defined us. What defined us now was the choice to begin again, to write our own story, together, one word at a time.